I'm just going live on YouTube
Okay.
and I'll just get started. I'm just okay, awesome. Hello everybody. Thanks for joining us back. Welcome to Friday Funda. Your host Dayan here from my Fun Studios. So we have a very special week today. Yesterday was, as you all know, that International Day for persons with disabilities. So to try and honor them, I think we have Rakesh, who's one of the evangelists trying to push hard for accessibility, right? So currently he heads product management at Adobe for especially trying to prioritize more on the accessibility part. So Rakesh comes from a very strong background on and very passionate about accessibility, right? So he's actually a accessibility specialist, an advocate, and a mentor, and he's pretty well known in this industry, right, for quite some time. So there's a little bit of history. So there was a way back in early 2000 where Rakesh was kind of visually impaired, and so he's a kind of right person who can actually try and empathize what exactly disability means, right? Especially with this 21st century, with so many tools and kind of products which we are trying to design for it, right? Prior to Adobe, he was advocate in for a kind of accessibility consultant at DQ Systems, and before that he also had worked in a Cognizant where he built almost like 100 plus accessibility experts, right? And he's pretty active in the industry, and he has trained thousands of engineers in this digital space, and he also runs his own website called maxability.co.in. Please do try and follow it. Where he tries to post and address a lot of his insights and thoughts. And in general, he's very active in this industry. He's a very frequent speaker and kind of a panel member, and kind of a most of these anything related to accessibility. And also, he's a big passionate about anything that where you try and build a design system for the digital space, right? I think Rakesh's expertise is always over there. Let's hear from Rakesh. And as all as a designers, so we all need to empathize because we all design for all, right? So everybody has the right to access everything in the world. Let's hear from the expert, Rakesh. Over to you, Rakesh.
Okay, thank you so much, Dan. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining today. And I'm very much happy that I'm able to inspire and talk to my favorite designers once again about accessibility, which is my passion always. A little bit background about me. Who am I? Um, it's Jackie Chan's movie, right? So I am a product manager for accessibility at Adobe. Um, so we do ensure the products that we built in Adobe are met with accessibility standards. We work with the various product teams to make sure our products meet accessibility requirements. And I'm part of the accessibility team, and I take care of few products as part of accessibility at Adobe. So I was in this accessibility space for 13 years now, and this all 13 years I'm learning from each one of you to understand the need of the designs, UI, mobile, desktop, websites, etc., and etc., and how we can make them more comfortable, usable, and easy to be accessed by various people. And this include 15% of world's population who have some form of disability. And now this is 15% probably is the major market than any minority um, customer set, and that counts to 1 billion of the world's population. And to add to that is the baby boomers, people with temporary challenges. That brings even more count to these 15% of world's population. And My intention is always to serve how we can make experiences more affordable, accessible. I am a speaker. I speak in various events on accessibility and disability, and it's always interesting to share the knowledge that we gain and learn from others. I do quite often. So that's briefly about me, and let's all cover from there. And thank you. Let's get started with how, what, why. So, why does anyone come to a product, a design, or a mobile application or a website? The intentions are clear when they come to a particular website. This morning, most of you would have gone to the website to search for the GHMC results. Is that correct? So,
Yep.
when you are doing this, the intention is that you don't want to listen or you don't want to read historical information about GHM. So, all that what you need is what party and how many seats are they in the lead. So that's a pretty much simple information. You know what you want. That's always in the back of your mind when you come to any UI, maybe website or mobile. So take some examples of say booking a ticket or enroll for a training or sending money like you have these Google Pays or phone pays, etc. So the intentions are clear when you come to an application and try to leverage what you want to do. So now, what do you think? If let's think you from a customer shoes, what does the customer think? Okay, I came to a particular UI, say for booking a bus ticket. What do I do now? So what do I do now? Do I need to press any button or do I need to find for the source or the source station and the target station, etc., arrival station, etc.? What is that I need to get started with? So once I know what I how to do, then how do I do it? Say the source. I want to fill in the source. Now, how do I do it? Do I type in the name of the city where I have to go? Or if I have to just type in the first character and it will auto-populate? Or is it a drop-down that I will pull over and find the information? How do I do that? Then, in many cases, probably not for you, but for many people who have challenges, they are not able to do it because either these controls where you have to fill in the data is not accessible, not usable, keyboard doesn't go there, or for a person who cannot see, is not able to type in the data or type in the city name. So they want to do it, they know what to do, but they're not able to do because the control does not either have a label that says here is where you have to enter the name of the city, or this is how you pull over the drop down and select. Now you have a lot of customized controls. You have autocomplete, you have a list box, you have a drop down within through which you can select a city, the source city. So, but in certain cases, if these controls are not made comfortable to the user, they might not be accessible. So now, what do I do? So to make it comfortable or to still, though it is not accessible, I have to do something to get that announced or get that city selected. So for example, I have entered H in the source to say Hyderabad, and the autocomplete didn't announce for me using my screen reading software, or the data is not populated. What do I do now? Do I have to press a down arrow to see what are the results that are starting with the letter H? Or do I press enter so that the first item is getting selected? Or do I need to press tab and see if this information is populated outside of the text box? What do I do? So do I have to type in the full name? If not, by H, if nothing is happening, do I need to type in the full name of the city? What do I do? Um, And sometimes it's neither taking the data nor it is allowing me to type in. So what do I do now? I am looking for filling in the data, but I am not able to do it. I'm just taking one example of different thought processes that go in when you are selecting the source and arrival cities in a booking website. So in this process, what are we trying to do? We are trying to bridge the psychological gap. This is what a customer goes through when they are doing a booking. So how do you cross that bridge of psychological gap? So how you can make it more intuitive, understandable, easy to approach different controls and do the booking as fast as any person who just uses a mouse and do it, selects the item, type in the date as easily as everyone does. So there are ways to do it, and there are areas that we can concentrate specifically to identify the challenges. Let's continue. So when we think of challenges, so there are different set of users who have certain disabilities. So if we talk about a person, forget about a person with disability. Say you don't have a mouse pad or a mouse available and you have to book a ticket. How many of you ever have tried booking a ticket using just a keyboard? Have you ever tried booking any ticket just with the keyboard? Ashok, how was your experience?
Yeah. So I think Rakesh, I think the audience cannot speak
Okay,
here because it's a webinar. Uh,
okay, so
yeah.
it's that's good. Okay, thank you. So thanks Ashok that you give it a try. So let me ask you all of you to do one exercise after the session. So there is a colorful website um, that can allow you to book the bus. I think you understood what I mean by the colorful website. Just go and try to book a ticket on that website just with the keyboard and tweet your experience or maybe share your experiences whenever on any new media that you are comfortable with. Trust me, you cannot do it. There is one website wherein it was the case a couple of months back. I believe it will be the same. Try to book a ticket on the website. Just the selection of the date is impossible with the keyboard. So what they did is that they have a read-only text box where you cannot fill in the date with the type in. At the same time, you cannot select the date from the calendar because that is not keyboard operable. So ultimately, the two ways of filling in the data for the date is not operable with the keyboard. So just try it. Can I do it without a mouse? This will be the exact experience when a person with the blindness who cannot see and who depends on a screen reading software. That is what I depend on. A screen reading software. It is a piece of software that you can install on your computer, and if you are using Mac, it comes with a pre-installed version called VoiceOver. You can enable it with Command F5 on Mac operating system, or on a desktop. You can install a free open source screen reading software called NVDA, Non-Visual Desktop Access. So this is a free open source for Windows operating system. So that is what I use to interact with my web pages. So when I try doing a booking with my screen reading software, because I cannot see, I have to depend on keyboard. I need to tab through, fill in the data and submit it. I can never do it. And imagine a person who have muscular challenges, who cannot stiffly use the mouse, or maybe cannot point the mouse because of a low vision. All of them depend on keyboard. And of course, many of us, if the mouse is not working or don't have a mouse, so then we depend on keyboard alone. So what are the mechanisms that we do? Navigation, tap, go through the page and fill in the data. Selecting a date from a calendar or maybe a city from a drop down. These are some things that you have to do with the keyboard. Submission. cancellation using a space bar. You just hit it and it submits or cancels. You press tab to navigate. Use up and down arrow keys to select a value from a drop down. You press space bar to select a checkbox or radio button. All this can be done with keyboard as long as you make them keyboard friendly. And all that you also what you have to think of is how you navigate, how the user is expected to navigate on a screen, the logical order in which the tab goes. So it it depends on how you give the design to the uh, developers and how you do an annotation. So I need you expect the user to go to the source text box and you tap from there, it goes to arrival city and then go to the date of journey. And if you have a tab again, return journey, and then maybe there is a type of buses that you can select, maybe luxury, express, etc. Right, drop down from there and check box to confirm the selection and then do a submit. You can tap through the experience. So if this is not the order in which the development or the developer codes, I mean, it is good to have an annotation of saying that this tab 1 should go here, tab 2 should go here, tab 3 should go here. That will give a clear indication for the developers to say, yeah, this is the order in which I have to place the DOM. And if this logical order is missing, say for example, it goes to the source station and then goes to the journey date and then comes back to arrival station and go to the return date. That's not a logical order. So having a logical order in which the tab should sequentially go is important. And then comes the managing the focus. In the example that when we have to select a date from a model or maybe an overlay, how is the focus managed? You click a button or maybe you get on focus onto the date text box or press enter or click on the calendar icon. The calendar overlay opens. Where is the focus now? The focus has to go to the calendar so that the user can select a date from the calendar. And when the calendar is closed by hitting a close button or maybe selecting a date from the calendar, the focus has to trigger back as soon as the calendar is closed. It should come back to the calendar icon or the most logical piece on the page. So it's called the focus management. So I'll tell you where you can see all this information. There is a very good guide from W3C that shows how the focus management should happen and how should the other UI controls has to be managed. And then comes the mouse forward information. So this is also, we put in a lot of experiences that you mouse over and a tooltip comes in on a button, or maybe you mouse over on a button and additional items like the edit or submit kind of a controls gets displayed. So how do you get these experiences even for a screen reader user or a keyboard only user? So whatever that you do on mouse over should also be available for the users over a keyboard. Tap through and do something there. There is a design pattern for that to make sure the mouse over controls are also keyboard operable. So all that we are trying to do is to make sure that all the mouse interactions or the functionalities of the page are accessible and usable by keyboard alone. This is one of the critical requirements of accessibility. If you're not doing this, as I said, people with muscular and physical challenges, people with screen reading software, people who have low vision will largely miss your information and functionality. So the other important piece, quite interesting and important to consider, is the focus indication. When you are tabbing through, as I said, tab is the way to navigate from one control to another on the page. How do you say to the user that you are here? Obviously, you might have seen the dotted focus indicator, focus ring that is displayed on the currently focusable item. How prevalently, how clearly that is displayed is important. So if that focus indicator is not visible, users will miss control of where they are on the screen. So it is important that you have a focus indicator around the control where the current focus is, and that is one of the important requirements. And especially people who use keyboard and people who rely on rely on keyboard because of low vision, they need to know where they are on the screen after a set of navigation. So each control that gets focus should have a focus indicator. And in some designs, we also may be doing it with a change in the background, or some other indications can be shown to say that you are here. As long as the indication is provided, it is good. And also make sure that that is clearly visible. Just not have the left and right borders visible, not the up and down, etc. The surroundings of the control should be clearly visible with the background colors. So sometimes we also have this possibility of having the focus indicator color overlapping with the background color, and you don't see that indicator so clearly. So make sure that the colors are contrasting enough for someone who have low vision to identify the indicators so clearly. So that's about the keyboard and focus indication, and this is definitely important area to be bothered about. And the next thing is colors. We Whenever we talk about design and accessibility, first thing that comes to our mind is colors. And it is a myth that people think accessibility has very limited set of colors that need to be used. That's not true. You can use any set of colors as long as they meet the contrast requirements, and as long as they are visible for people who have low vision and color blindness. So, as I say, no color is a bad one. Any color can be used, irrespective of their visibility on the screen. It also matters when you are using set of colors. Don't solely rely on color to indicate information. Say, for example, you have three steps. Take an example of a banking website where you do a third-party transaction. The first step shows in the progress bar. The first step is in green color that says fill in the data, and the second step is lightly grayed out to say that you are currently in this step. I'm just giving an indicative examples, but the intention is to say that there is a color difference to color is used to differentiate that you are in this step and this step is completed. Green means probably the completed step. Gray color is to say that you are currently in this step and submit. And third step is in red color. So in this case, what happens is you are using three different colors to indicate the states. Step one completed, green. Step two, current step, grayed out, and the third step, red, indicate that it's an upcoming step. In this case, color is the only way of differentiating the information. So people who have who cannot see and people who rely on color, uh, who have deficiency of color, will have problems to differentiate. One of the famous color differentiations is red and green color blindness. And people who have red and green color deficiency cannot differentiate these colors. So in addition to the color, you provide an additional pattern or maybe some additional icon that says this is completed and this is current step and this is the upcoming step. So pattern in addition to color, and a programmatic label to that will tell the screen reader user that says this is step one completed, step two current step, and step three upcoming step. And programmatic label that can be read out by the screen reader. Either it can be an icon, as I said, for the pattern, you can use an icon and provide a label to the icon, or you can have invisible programmatic label along with the icon and the color. So make sure whatever that you do is not purely color dependent. Or in other words, maybe when you have a form control and a form and you want to indicate that this particular control, you have an email ID text box and you typed in Rakesh, and there is a red color border that has been displayed around this text box to indicate that this is an invalid format. In this case, color is the only way of indicating that this control is red in color and it is not a valid format. So provide an additional indication that it can be a textual message that says provide an email in this format, or maybe an additional control, additional input that can be programmatically defined that this is not a correct email address. So the color, the bottom line is that color should not be the only way of indicating an action, prompting a response, or identifying a control. The other thing, though you use colors, make sure they are contrast enough for the user to indicate or identify the information. We'll talk about the contrast in a while. So this is what the contrast requirements are. So one is the color contrast. 3:1. So when there is a text that is 14 point bold or above, the text font size is 14 point bold or above, should have a minimum contrast ratio of 3:1 with its background. You pick the background color, you pick the font color, and if you do a luminosity contrast ratio between these two colors, there are tools available to do it. I'll show you that. Should have a minimum contrast ratio of 3:1. And the next one is the non-text items. Whenever that you have icons, symbols, or the patterns that are non-textual information, should have a minimum contrast ratio of 3:1. Say, for example, you provide I mean, the expand collapsible accordions have a indicator, arrow mark indicator. That is showing an information to tell you whether it is expanded or collapsed. The symbol is non-textual information because it is providing context to the user. So these kind of elements should have a minimum contrast ratio of 3:1. Text within the buttons with its surrounding text. Say you have submit, cancel kind of a button, and the value, the label of that button with its surrounding text should have a 3:1 ratio because the text is embedded into these buttons. The colors within the charts and graphs should have a minimum contrast ratio of 3:1 with its borders or the surrounding colors. Icons representing actions, like the question mark to say that it's in information or warning icon. So if you have such a kind of icons, should have a contrast of at least 3:1 with the icon with its immediately surrounding color. So just to make sure that the icon is clearly visible with its either you say the background or the surrounding content, the icon should be clearly visible. Pick the contrast ratios between the icon and its surrounding content and make sure that it is at least 3:1. Except for all these, the regular text, anything below 14 point bold, meaning 12 point, 10 point, 8 points, 14 points even without bold, should have a minimum contrast ratio of 4.5:1. So just think of these two mathematical numbers, 3:1, 4.5:1. Anything about 4.5:1 is automatically accessibility compliant. So anything below 4.5:1, just think whether it is regular text or large text. If it is large text, if it is between 3.1 is to 4.5:1, then it is passed. Anything below 3:1 is always a fail, no matter whether it is icon, it can be charts, graphs, colors of icons, or the text embedded into the buttons, text on images, doesn't matter. Any Any color contrast below 3 is to 1 is a failure, and any contrast above 4.5 is to 1 is a pass. So then comes the color contrast analyzer. This is a tool called CCA. Color contrast analyzer is a piece of tool that can be that is read out by the, I mean, that can allow you to pick the foreground color and background color, and that will display a contrast ratio. I'm not sure if this video that I'm going to play can be heard by you. Let me see if I can share the computer voice. So
Menu.
we should be able
Slideshow.
to hear it now.
Slideshow. Slide 13.
Hi all, today's topic is color contrast VCAC 2.1. To check for color contrast, download the color contrast analyzer tool from the Pasillo group. The link is available in the description.
So she's just
In
talking
VCAC
about the
2.1, there are two success criteria.
contrast ratios
The first one
requirements
is
as per the standards.
1.4.3 contrast
Shortly, she'll be
minimum,
showing the
and the second
tool on
is
how you pick the colors.
1.4.11 non-text contrast that talks about color contrast. Let us now see how to check the contrast in both scenarios. Open the tool on your desktop. Open the web page or PSD where you have to test for color contrast. Click on foreground eyedropper and pick the foreground, that is the text color. Click on the background eyedropper and pick the background color. See that in the color contrast section, the contrast ratio is displayed according to VCAC 2.1. Must have a minimum contrast ratio of 4.5 is to 1. In this case, the contrast ratio is 1.9 is to 1. Hence, it is failed. If the font size is 18 point or 14 point, bold and above, the required contrast ratio is just 3 is to 1.
So this failed for both 3
Let
is
us
to 1
now
and
see
4.5.
another success criteria. 1.4.11 non-text contrast. According to this VCAC 2.1 requirement, any symbols, signs, icons that are not textual but convey significant information to the user must have a minimum color contrast ratio of 3 is to 1 between the color of the non-text item with its immediately surrounding color. To check the contrast ratio, pick the foreground color as you did previously. Now the foreground color is the color of the symbol, while the background color is the immediately surrounding color. See that the color contrast is 2.9 is to 1. This failed for
Just failed.
1.4.11
3
non-text
is to 1 is
contrast.
required, and it's 2.9 is to 1.
Points to be considered
So
while
that's
testing the
how the
color
color contrast
contrast.
is checked. Let me
For
move on to the
success
next slide.
criteria 1.4.
Slideshow. Slide 14. Create.
Let me stop the.
Meeting controls. Row 1. Meeting controls. Win. Chat. Pause. Stop. Meet. Disable. Hide name. Hide video. Hide floating. Copy streaming link. Share computer sound. Checked.
So I stopped this because my screen reader will also start speaking when I'm talking. So so what you can do when you are creating new designs is to create a color palette to you have the hexadecimal values of the set of colors that you're going to use in your UI, and split them into the foreground and background color combinations. So here, if you see the combination that in the case was used between this white color FFFFF and 262, whatever that number is, 262833. So these are the two foreground and background colors. If you consider, um, there are different combinations that you can make and see whether the contrast ratios are passing, and if at all they are passing, in which criteria are they passing. So you have this chart of x-axis and y-axis where you provide foreground colors on one axis and the background colors on other axis. Uh, so in this case, for each color, you have a contrast ratio that is mentioned in this palette. So there is a tool called color contrast checker. If you want, you can use that as well, wherein you have a hexadecimal value. If you fill in the foreground hexadecimal value and the background hexadecimal value, it shows the contrast between the text items between these two colors, and that's what shows the contrast ratio. Similarly, what you have done in the previous screen. So the difference between these two tools is the color contrast analyzer is what you can use when the design is already available, and if you are considering set of colors, if you have that color codes, you can use another tool called color contrast analyzer. WebM's color contrast checker. I can share you those links with Dayan after the session, wherein you can put in the foreground color and background color. If you see, these are the number of combinations that are provided with the contrast ratio. So depending on the contrast values, you can use whatever the color combination that is meeting the requirement of accessibility. So it is always good to have this kind of a palette that is built with your color combinations, so that you will know which all colors are as per accessibility standards, and you can just concentrate on those colors rather than creating a design and then identifying the colors that are not accessibility compliant and rechanging them. This is one way you can have a palette available. So that's about the colors. And the next and the important part of things is the structure of the page. How do you define the structure of the page? Most often, I know the designers have something in mind when they are putting it content or text items on the screen. So they know where which heading is and what is the intention of the heading, whether it is the main heading or the subheading or the subheading of the subheading, or when they have a list of items, when the sort of content should be a tabular in format. But if this information is not safely conveyed to the developer, the intention of the designer may not be met. So what you can do is to have an annotation of roles, states, and properties of each item that you intended to provide. So a text box, if you are using contact us as the main heading of the page, in the text provide an annotation that says this is a H1. This should be H1. When I say role, state, and the property, a role is a heading. A link is a role. Otherwise, called as type. A heading is a type of an item. A text box is a type of an item. A list is the type of an item. So provide that intention clearly to the developers, and this should be a H1 or the main heading of the page. The subheading of the H1 should be H2, and the subsequent heading should be H3, or if it is in the same hierarchy, H2. So it is good to have one or maximum two H1s depending on the page content, but ideally one H1 and the other subheadings of the page H2s. But this information has to be safely conveyed to this developer when you are handing off the designs. Lists. You have to be clear about what kind of lists are you using. Bulleted lists, meaning unordered or ordered lists. So what is developers, if you don't do provide that information that this should be unordered or ordered list, is that they convert your bullets into small images and then provide information besides it. What happens when you navigate this content with the screen reader? Then it will not say that this is list and it have 5 items. It will not say that this is a sequence of ordered list. It will not say that it is a heading level 1, contact us. It will read as if it is any other text on the screen. So semantics is very much important for accessibility, and that semantics should be decided by the UX designer more appropriately, so that the developer can just replicate what your intentions are. Similarly, when you have tables, simple tables are very much easy to for someone to let you know if there are column headers and row headers with the data. But if there are little more complex tables, like you have quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3 as a row header, column headers, and under quarter 1, it is again subdivided into January, February, March. So now each item has 2 subheadings. How you merge Q1 into 3 cells and split Jan, Feb, March into 3 different cells, still providing the relationship between the data with their corresponding column headers. So when the screen reader user reads that content, it has to say quarter 1, January, this is the number. Quarter 2, February, this is the number. That is how the information has to be conveyed. If that relationship cannot be conveyed, the information is troublesome for someone who uses a screen reading software to understand. So tabular form and tabular data has to be clearly represented. So similarly, sections and landmarks, this is quite a bit of a concept that is got into the view of the people with HTML5 and a new accessibility technologies. So earlier there was no way for a user to understand whether this set of items are in the header, footer, or main content region, or in the aside region, etc. So to bridge that gap, I know HTML5 have brought in the section items, more semantically correct items. So you can, the developer can use a header tag to say that this is in the header region of the page, a main element to say that it is the main content region of the page. And these semantics will be conveyed to the screen reader user. If the developer uses a main tag, then it says you are in the main content region of the page. If it is in the footer and the developer uses a better footer tag, then it says you are in the footer region of the page. But these section items will be only provided by the developer when the designer, UX designer says that this is the portion that is global header, and this is where you have the main content region of the page. So structure, the overall structure of the page also matters for accessibility. So these are some things that you convey with annotations to the developer when you are creating these experiences. So then comes the labels of the form controls. When you have form items like the radio buttons, check boxes, etc. Again, the same semantics continues, but what we are trying to give the information here is that the labels that you provide. So when I say label, it is something which is always visible on the screen. I know many of us try to use placeholders for labels. Placeholder can never be a label. It is an additional hint. If you see the definition of placeholder, it can never be a substitute for label. So label is something which is technically always visible on the screen. So there are various reasons why you do it, because labels, without labels, age-old people cannot understand, and people with memory loss cannot understand what to fill in there. Once you fill in some data, it is just a placeholder, says first name, and you fill in the name Rakesh, and in the last name I filled in Paladugula, and then when you come back, and you will not find the label because it is a placeholder. Instead, you see your name. So it is difficult to relate what is that text box is about and what the data that is filled in there if the controls are more in number. So people who have short-term memory loss, people with illness, people with visual difficulties have tough time. So labels are always good. That is one scenario. And if the other scenario, if you're seeing the latest era, um, voice input is quite prevalent. If you don't have a label, how do you say or what do you say to your voice recognition software? Say that click on submit button. If the submit button is not programmatically and visually labeled, how does the voice control, voice recognition software know that you are asking to do this action? So visual labels are always important with emerging technologies, mobile information, and of course for assistive technologies to understand what's there on the screen. For any form control, maybe radio buttons, check boxes, form buttons, drop downs, text boxes, everything should have a visible label. And that label, make sure it is in the nearest proximity so that someone who uses a magnifier is just can cover a little UI on the screen. They have to capture both label and text box in one go. Just try to do this when you are free. You can use a straw or you can roll a piece of paper and see through that on your computer screen. And when you navigate through by rolling over that on your screen, you will only see a certain portion of the screen. And if you do that with on a form control, if label is not captured within that viewable region within the rollover page, that it is not in the close proximity. Label and text box should get immediate focus. That is how people with low vision reads through the screen. So having close proximity to the label. And also define what kind of a control it is. If it's a radio button, checkbox, or what kind of a control it is, so that they appropriately create that experience. So that's called a role or type, like similar to a H1. And state, whether it is checked or unchecked, currently enabled or disabled. In some form controls, you see, until you fill in all the mandatory fields, the submit button does not get active. And you show it is with a grayed out. So how does that information convey to a screen reader user? So if you say that this is disabled as of now, the developer can add an additional attribute like the RA disabled or disabled attribute so that the button is read out as submit button not active currently. That is what the screen reader says. So it is important to let the user know the state. It is more important when you are having a little more complex components with the time constraint. We cannot talk probably about many of them, but if you take an example of tab panel, which tab is currently selected? Um, that is a state. Tab 1 selected, tab 2 selected, or when you are using uh, doing expand collapse of accordion, which one is currently expanded, whether it is expanded or collapsed, that is a state. Similarly, the properties, like a form control can have a required as a property, can have a password as a property, can have a read only as a property. So these are some important information that has to be conveyed to the screen reader and users. So these are important for form controls. So this is more about the accessibility information, but let me um, give you this URL of design patterns. When you go to this page, there are clearly defined design patterns, how a keyboard should interact, what is that is important, how do you convey with examples available on ARIA design patterns. The current technology is ARIA 1.2. It is a living document and gets updated with each version. You have a lot of examples there. I appreciate if you can go through this. I'll share this deck with Dayan so that we can have a more clear picture of to share with you. This is the URL where you can see a lot of examples, patterns of complex components like the carousels, menus, and tab panels, sliders, etc. Whenever you are creating complex components, I would appreciate if you can go through these set of uh, pages, examples, and make sure all that is defined in this Bible is met. And how we define all this, I'm not going in depth to it, but whatever that I spoke now about the labels, about the headings, or whatever that we talked today, are derived from the WCAG, or called as WCAG, the W3C accessibility standards, and the current version is 2.1. And here is the link for the standard. So it is something which Rakesh hasn't developed, or Rakesh has created the standard. These are the W3C WCAG standards. The working group of W3C have defined the standards. And this is the Bible for me. Each morning, this is where I go for reference when I have a confusion on whether it is accessible or not. And a lot of content information is up there. Feel free to ping me or message me if you have any questions on accessibility anytime. I'm available on Rakesh underscore A11Y on Twitter. Rakesh at maxability.co.in is my email ID. Feel free to drop in a mail or a message anytime. And I'm open up for questions.
Well, yeah, I think that's a kind of a great insight, Rakesh. I think a lot of actionable insights for our fellow designers, and definitely if we kind of figured out that it's going to be a combination of developers and designers and the product managers. All three have to combine to make sure that we try and build a product that's useful for all. So I think we definitely have time for a couple of questions. So yeah, so I can go first. So, Rakesh, I think you've been in this industry for quite some time, right? I think it's been more than a decade now. So, what do you see the pulse of, in terms of some of the products that have been designed 10 years back and the ones that are built now? So, you see there is a improvement in this space.
Absolutely, Dayan. And if you see, the awareness of accessibility has drastically increased.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of conversations that are going on throughout the globe. In India as well, there are people who are thinking about accessibility, thinking about the needs of people with disabilities. More awareness has come in. Definitely, there is a shift, but we are not at the end, but we are in a good shape a decade back compared with today.
Totally. Yep. So one kind of surprising factor. So even during when I used to work in, so the first when I encountered it somewhere around 2005, when I used to work for Oracle, that's where this term came up, like hey, there's something called accessibility and stuff like that, right? So why is that? This is the push is coming from the B2B side, whereas if you see the examples, what he showed was the BSNL website, and I also remember when you said the colorful booking website, you're trying to refer to IRCTC, right? So the
Nimbus.
sad, yeah, the sad part that some of the government websites, which are like used by millions of people. So yeah, so I saw that push should have come from there instead
Right.
of it coming from a corporate side of which is more towards enterprise and B2B. So what is your take on that?
What I, at least it's my personal opinion, though, Dayan, is the skill set of accessibility is not up to the mark as of today. When
Correct.
you compare with the corporates to the rest of the developer ecosystem, when I say this, obviously the government projects have been captured with a set of organizations that are pretty much good in probably many areas, but I'm not sure, at least in India, I don't see many people who are well aware of accessibility and keeping up with what's happening with the globe. For us, at least, who are in the corporate side of things, are always in a competitive mode and see what the globe is doing. And we try to either emulate them or we make it better than that and we continue with them. But when it comes to the government side of things, it's sometimes unhappy for me to say that the accessibility India website may not be accessible as we want to be. That's something the developer ecosystem in the government vendor organizations might have to improve. Is what my personal opinion is.
Yep. I think something like this, ADA compliant kind of a thing might help, right? Because there it's pretty strict that any public website has to be compliant with that thing, right?
Correct. Yeah, and as you rightly said, it is also our citizens our responsibility to go and file against the Indian websites which are not accessible. We also have a good legal requirement that's Right to Persons with Disabilities Act that's passed in the Parliament in 2016. But we have tools, but we don't use them.
Right, right. So what is your advice on in general when so not all companies have the luxury of building a design system, right? Because that's like a one good way of approaching. Because I have built my Lego blocks, and all of these Lego blocks are accessibility compliant. So whatever applications I'm going to build with this design system, it'll at least adhere to some of those basic compliance factor. But how does it work when some products don't have the design system? So
Okay. It's again the need that drives, right?
right.
So I don't say there is, I don't see why some product do not need to be accessible for any
Mm-hmm.
product. The design system that we create need to be accessible. And as you said, many of the organizations may not have that team to work on the designs. And I believe studios, organizations like yours, probably who have, lead these design systems for various organizations or vendors, can bring in that shift change in the mindset
Absolutely.
of the people, the organizations, and it should become a DNA of organizations and the people like your organizations like yours. Where you talk about design, it's be a de facto information that it says accessibility is part of my design, or maybe the differentiating factor when
Mm-hmm.
you hire an X vendor and me, or X vendor and Y vendor, is Y vendor is giving accessible designs compared with the X vendor which does not know or may not be taking accessibility as serious as we should.
Totally. Yep. Yep. I think maybe yeah. So the one I think good starting point is some of these open source things like material design or
Right.
folks who have actually out in the market, so people can start learning from there. And when you
Correct.
try to reuse, it's definitely going to be a little bit kind
Right.
of compatible. Awesome. I think we're
At
almost.
Adobe also we have had this React Spectrum that is open source, and we have a
Oh,
lot of
nice.
effort in accessibility for that.
Oh, very good. Okay, so this is part of the Adobe's
Adobe's
initiative.
open source, yeah,
Oh, very
framework.
good. Okay, awesome, awesome. Yep. Well, we are almost on top of the hour. So one last question. So, what's your future plan, Rakesh? Yeah, I know that you are trying to evangelize this, and you run this, maxability.co.in as well. So,
Yeah.
any future plans?
As of now, not much, but maybe I want. My interest is more on evangelizing disability. Then probably I may end up starting up a non-profit organization that serves
Very nice.
people with disabilities. But no, what the future decides for me.
Absolutely. Yep. Any last piece of advice for designers?
Yeah, definitely. Be in touch with the accessibility community. I know design community is one that I see is so inclined with the general community. I see them on LinkedIn, I see them on Facebook. Unlike the other set of the communities in the IT,
Mm-hmm.
I would like you also have a watch on accessibility along with what you are already doing. That
Absolutely.
will leverage, bring more value to your career, yourself, and your products with more usage
Yep.
analytics.
Totally. Yep. Well, thanks a lot, Rakesh, for your time. And yeah, we are pretty fortunate that you have accepted our invite and took some time to go through some of these insights. So I think it was pretty valuable. Definitely, we'll make
Wonderful.
sure that we'll try and adhere to these points in our products, whatever we try and design. Right.
So,
Yep. And more power to you. Yep.
thank you so much, Diane, and thank you everyone for joining today. Thank you so
Yep.
much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend, and yeah, see you guys next week. Bye.